Hello everyone, welcome to the episode of SoLeadSaturday. Our today's guest, Tim Gray, is the founder and managing director of Prophit Systems. He designed a software solution suite that has saved his clients more than $100 million and returned an ROI of over 450%. He is a thought leader in the field of supply chain and has earned a reputation throughout the APAC region for his pragmatic, hands-on, results-driven approach. His career has seen him work in a range of manufacturing industries, and he also is an active consultant across this field. So our today's episode is mainly going to be focused on manufacturing industries and the supply chain, which is like an area of expertise for our today's guest. So I can't wait to hear more about it. Let's just welcome him and hear more about his career journey. How did he find his area of interest and managing to lead that? Hey, hi team. Very happy to have you on the show and discuss more about your area of expertise. Thank you so much for all your time being so
pleasure.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's all my pleasure. And to start with, which we have a beginning segment of passion or the interest. So how did you find your area of interest, interest in this particular field, which is manufacturing industries and supply chain, and what motivates you to be in this field on day-to-day basis?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Vishali. I used to work as a process improvement engineer, and I really enjoyed making factories work faster and better and helping people just improve the general flow. When you improve the performance of machines in the factory, you make people's lives better, because it's horrible being in a machine that's always broken down. But I also found that it didn't matter how good we got at running the machines, if you didn't have the right materials, or if you didn't have the right job up next, then irrespective of how well we could have it running, you could stop the machines and the performance would fall, and you could have customers that were unsatisfied. So I started looking quite critically at supply chain and what we could do to fix it. And what I found over time was you can have an enormous leverage. It takes a long time to get machines running like Formula One cars. And you can undo that immediately if you don't have the right material, or if your customer rings up and needs something urgently, you're not prepared for it. So that got me really excited about, well, maybe we can actually improve the performance of the factories and everyone's life in those factories if we can help them be able to satisfy their customers more immediately. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah, so it is more or like you found that gap and where you would like to work as an expert in that particular part.
Yeah, indeed.
So that's a great actually about the passion or the area of interest. It's very few people, I guess, that found that value. What would be the value of that particular area of expertise within the market? So thank you so much for sharing. And moving towards our next segment, which is questions from the audience. And I have shortlisted a couple of questions for you. The first question that we have is, would you like to share your insights on how to determine approved vendors or suppliers or manufacturers and how they would measure quality?
There's a lot of components to that to unpack. It's a really interesting question. And I think today, in the way that COVID has affected the world, we've seen the tyranny of distance and the tyranny of international borders. So one of the things that is becoming really important, we'd already seen a trend in America of almost a renaissance in manufacturing, and businesses, even if they weren't the cheapest supplier, if they were local, there was a preference to buy American, or in Australia, a preference to buy Australian. A little preference. You wouldn't pay a lot more, but a bit more. And now, since COVID, we're starting to see it can be incredibly difficult to import something from China or from Europe, just because it's hard to get a ship, it's hard to get a container, and so on. And so what we're seeing is the businesses that are surviving and thriving in the pandemic world have not just chased cost. They've had a number of suppliers so that they can mitigate risk. Secondly, they've created relationships. They haven't just screwed the suppliers down on price, but they've developed a relationship where they communicate with suppliers to kind of figure out, how can we work better? How can we, if we need a cheaper price from you, what can we do so that you can supply it cheaper? Not just expect you to not make profit, but Can we forecast better? Can we give you longer lead times? Can we, reserve capacity from you and tell you exactly what we need at closer time? And so this is starting to become a really critical recipe where the world in globalization, everyone went out to get on the internet and buy the cheapest price. Now what we're seeing is the cost to serve is dramatically impacted. If your product doesn't turn up, you can't give it to your customer. If your raw materials don't show up on time or in the quantity or the quality that you expected, you can stop your factory and upset your customer and then be working on weekends to make it up, an emergency freight, and so on. So the cost to serve has become far more important than the cost to purchase. And that's a transition where it's been really, globalization encouraged purchasing at the lowest price. And now we're starting to see, hang on, that's not really good for everyone. We must have alternative suppliers, and some of those suppliers you have to nurture. So we're starting to see more respect in the supply chain and an awareness of a fully qualified cost to serve rather than just the cost to buy.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So this is completely new to me. But when you're mentioning, are there, when it comes to manufacturing industries, like vendors, suppliers, how much the cross-boundary restrictions comes into the picture actually? As you were mentioning something about that, right?
Yeah, look, it can be a real problem it depends on the region and where you're buying from. But if you're buying from somebody locally, then this is not an issue. If you're buying from somebody where you have tariffs or checkpoints or there are issues around what you can freight where, then that becomes a major issue. So again, there's a real, I don't know if you've seen this in the States. I haven't been there since COVID started, but we started seeing a real, almost a village-like kind of narrative and response from people that why you're suffering from COVID and everyone else around you. And there's this real kind of desire to work more locally. And that just evaporates all of those other issues like cross-border challenges. So, if you're talking high volume commodity products, you may have to go all around the world to get the best price, but you still have to be able to supply it. And that's just a pain for the procurement and logistics people. Thankfully, most freight forwarders will help you with those kind of challenges, but it must be mitigated, and you must, if you're trying to establish a deep supply chain for high volume businesses, you must have those costs and those kind of barrier understandings well understood before you tie yourself into a contract where you could be in strife.
Yep. So it is a lot more factors goes under that. So thank you so much for sharing. And one more question that we have under that segment, which is there a fixed of SKUs that a person can manage directly or indirectly? How to leverage the conflicting manufacturing or planning or financial objectives?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of our software helps deal with that. From my experience, if you've got under 100 SKUs, an individual can typically handle it with an ERP system like a SAP or Oracle, and typically they'll also use Excel to help them. If you have 100,000, you're going to need tools, and even 2,000 or 3,000. For me, the defining point is when we start working with customers, we do opportunity assessments and we look for where we can help them deliver the most value, because our software and our services cost money. So we want to make sure we save more than we cost. And one of the things we often look at is if we had a more systematized approach to your stock management and we allowed you to manage by exception, because the tools will do most of the work, it frees your time to focus on where there's deeper decisions to be made. So yeah, I think a good number is, 100 is quite easy-ish, but you might have 50 warehouses, in which case 100 becomes, we call them SKU locations now, is across 50. You've now got 5,000. That's too much to do without tools, because you're going to have stock that's getting aged. You're going to have stock that's getting dust on it, or is out of its shelf life. It absolutely depends on the products that you make. If you're dealing with spare parts for antique or vintage cars, then they're going to sit in storage and you're going to have long shelf life, and you possibly don't need as many systems as if you've got fresh milk that's got a shelf life of 3 days. So it's a complex question and there's a lot of depth to it as well. But a general rule of thumb for me is, 100 you can do an Excel by a person if there's a lot of value in it or a lot of age implications of getting stock levels wrong. You might want to look at having tools, or we can help you with happily share our IP and our thought process around how to set up your Excel, or there'll come a time when you need tools because Excel is just too error prone. But
So you use a lot of Excel, you are saying, like Excel when?
We used to. In fact, that's how I started Profit Systems. I used to just do improvement consulting, where we'd go in and we'd find where the biggest opportunities are in businesses we were working with, and then help them quickly get tactics and strategies and deliverables around how we deliver that value.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept finding that we'd put in Excel, and the reason why the business systems couldn't give you those answers are always the opportunities where people can't see them. So they're just out of your line of sight. And they're out of your line of sight because the business systems can't see them. So we'd have to put in a system. We'd use Excel. But when we came back in 3 months or 6 months' time, we'd find formulas had become corrupt. Somebody had moved on and they hadn't trained the next person. And it just wasn't very robust. So actually, we started building a Profit suite around about 2001 and have been building it ever since. So this is a much more rigorous and robust approach than Excel. But Excel is still a brilliant prototyping tool. So I use it in my consulting, but I don't use it to leave it with customers because it's just not robust enough.
Yeah,
but everyone likes it because it's flexible.
Yeah, it's definitely really good to know, and hope that answers the audience questions. Next segment that we have is a fun segment where I'm going to give you 3 keywords which are more or associated with your profile and career. And you have to tell me kind of a replacement keyword or the abstract or the short definition for that. So are you ready?
No, okay. I think so.
Yeah, so the first keyword that we have is manufacturing.
Complex and exciting.
Oh, okay. Second keyword is profit.
Profit, as spelt by my company, exciting, value delivering, always running at a fast pace.
Oh, that's great. And the third keyword is thought leader.
Thought leader is aware and always listening and always watching, looking for what's next and what people need to help them on the journey.
Oh, wow. That is a great one. And thank you so much for sharing and being impromptu in this section. Moving towards our next segment, which is more about exploring your career, work, and volunteering. You have such a huge experience, actually, work experience, and also you are a founder of your own company, Profit Systems.
Yep.
In this particular segment, I have tried to come across your volunteering thing actually through your profile. So I'm going to focus more on that part in this particular segment. So the question that we have is, would you like to share more about your volunteering experience being founder, Help Jasper Walk, and president of the board of management volunteer? What are the goals or are you planning to achieve through it? How big is the community and how can someone join it and volunteer and what it works like for?
Okay, great. So just quickly, Help Jasper Walk. Jasper has severe cerebral palsy, and just at the time when stem cell treatments were becoming available, as Jasper was growing into a teenager, it was clear he would not be able to walk without serious intervention treatments. And stem cell treatments were starting to tackle the brain barrier area and work on the central cortex, where the potential for allowing just to be able to walk unassisted was a real potential. But we needed to raise at that time. We needed to raise about $110,000. So I started a website and we started some pretty crazy endeavors. I'm not built for running, but we started running ultra marathons and 110 kilometers because we need to raise $110,000 and so on. And so we were successful in raising a lot of money to help Jasper, and he's had a number of treatments. So it's been very very inspiring and very humbling actually to have so many people donate so much. So you can see how emotional about it. The other exposure I had to volunteer work was working in the board of management for an organisation called Lifeline. Lifeline are the largest body in Australia. I believe they're international as well, where they help people in crisis counselling. So people that are feeling suicidal. Government simply don't have the resources and the infrastructure to provide support. And I was fascinated by the work these people do, and also found it was really, really interesting. The role that I played was I joined the board because I was invited to, and I was an interesting fit because most of the people that go into the board there had not come from business. They'd been counselors and had very wonderful healing ways about them, and couldn't get past the people who donated money. They just felt that they should suck it up and just keep that they're people providing crisis counselling 24 hours a day, and you might be 3 a.m. people are taking calls to help people down, and their view was every cent that is donated has to go to reach the end customer. And me coming from a business background, I had a slightly different view. Interestingly, I was like, we have to protect the people that are counselling, because they can't, if they're sitting in 40-degree heat in a cabin because we haven't spent air conditioning for them or given them a cup of coffee or something, that's unrealistic. I could not be empathic and healing and caring and so on if I'm incredibly uncomfortable and tired. And so it was interesting that my role on the board ended up being, I became chairman of the board for a while, to change that view of, as a board, we're not just counsellors counselling everybody and trying to save everyone else. We've got to make sure our resources are renewed and supported, and that way they can continue to provide incredible service. There came a point where actually the organisation outgrew me and I outgrew them because I was too abrupt, but it was a really wonderful time for my experience for them, and it was the right time. And I'd urge anybody that is interested in helping back, think about the skills that you've got, and don't just assume that that they won't be interested in you, because particularly as volunteer organisations, there's so much demand. There's so many different worthy charities that it's incredibly hard to get funds. It's incredibly hard to get people and attention. And they need help, even if your skills are not mainstream. They'll normally, it's incredible what you can do, even if you're not even if what they're delivering is not your core skill, you can probably still help.
That's great. Actually, both are really great initiatives, and I would encourage students and the professionals as well to connect with you and learn more about those volunteering opportunities, because volunteering is always great to have in your profile. And even though you see Tim's profile is a lot more in the expert in the manufacturing and supply chain, he does a lot of volunteering as well. So it is moreover inspirational to see how people manage to have that balance between both the professional side as well as the volunteering side alongside. So thank you so much, Tim, for sharing both the initiatives and insights about it.
Thank you.
Moving towards our next segment, which is kind of a closure segment of this particular show, is leadership. So no doubt that you are truly leading your area of expertise, manufacturing and supply chain. What is your leadership style, and any specific leader that you always follow or admire, and why?
Thank you. My leadership style is to be very open and frank with my team. I have a small and highly trusted team, highly motivated, highly trusted. I always like to lead by example. I think if you don't have integrity, it's folly to expect your staff to act in any other way. They're going to mirror what you do. So, like children will, it's more important what you do than what you say. And so that's probably the first and most important thing. I encourage feedback. I don't always like it, but but we can't learn if we don't get frank and open discussions. So they're probably the two most important things. We have another kind of dimension, because we're always working with clients and we're helping them in a change management project. Not always called that, but when we're putting in systems or when we're changing the way that they're working, if we don't change the behaviours, then you're not going to change the outcome of the business. If people keep doing what they did, then they're going to get what they got. So we have to do a lot of change, and I'm reminded of a project I'm working with my team on at the moment, that while mostly we have very, very slick processes that always work, there's always people in different mindsets or different skill sets or different experience that you have to work with, and for regardless of the best intentions and the best experience, sometimes you're just gonna butt up against people that it doesn't work so well for, and you've really got to remain fluid and to be able to work with them and around them and help them to be every success, because we don't want to break people on the journey. And it takes a lot of energy. it's much easier if you're in your flow and everyone's going along, but that's just not life, And I'm constantly reminded that we're here to learn, and and if we can carry people along the way. And one of my favorite sayings in this area, and some people will find it confronting, but there's a wonderful saying from the military that is, you carry your wounded, but you shoot the stragglers. And you can spend an enormous amount of time on people that just aren't going to come on board. And from a leadership perspective, some of the best advice I can give is help people that are already broken, that they're wounded, carry them by all means, and you gladly take the burden. But if people are digging in their heels and they definitely don't want to come, and you can't make them come, right, you'll spend all of your energy on people that don't want to go with you, and you'll be denying the momentum you can give to the people that do want to go. So there comes a time when you've got to cut people off, and it's a really, really important. You can't save everybody, and you've got to, everyone has a choice about which journey they want to go on, and that's a tough part of leadership. But it's easy to fall over too far on the side of just being a bully and try and push everyone with you, or alternatively, try and carry everyone and not get nearly as far as you would have or could have, because you're trying to carry people that just don't want to come along. So that skill of being able to pick who's wounded, who's out in front, who's wounded, and who's a prisoner that doesn't want to be there, and you got to let them go. So it's interesting, and we all have our own journeys to find on that. But that for me is one of the keys of really, really good leadership.
Yep. Thank you so much for sharing. Do you have any name, like, any specific leader that you always follow or admire, and why?
I'm always inspired by, I don't know him, but I'm always inspired by Richard Branson. He's just an impressive character, and seems to manage the political and media world with integrity, and that's a tough gig to do in today's world. So that's inspiring for me.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing. And those are definitely really very valid points when it comes to the leadership. And the way you mentioned, it is more about, encouraging and inspiring the teams, and leadership by an example. So, so thank you so much for sharing, and really appreciate all your time and consideration being on the show. This is definitely something that, different areas of expertise as of now, because we never covered the supply chain expertise on the show. So you are the very first guest, and really happy to have you.
Thank you very much for having me, Michelle.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Bye for now. All right. So this is all about Tim Gray and the way he's managing to lead his area of expertise in manufacturing industries and supply chain. Hope you will learn some insights about those fields. And before we close our today's episode, I'm going to have a closure quote as per our new tradition. Our today's closure quote is from Seth Godin, and it says, "Developing expertise or assets that are not easily copied is essential. Otherwise, you are just a middleman." So on that quote, we are closing today's episode. See you guys in the next episode. Until we meet, happy leading. Let's lead together. Stay safe. Bye for now.